Hey guys, so it's Steven. I know it's been a long time since my last video, but anyway, I've been busy with work, busy at home. Had some health issues, and so just haven't had time to make any videos. So sorry about that. But do have a new installment today. I'm going to do a two-part video about custom mold making. So one of the things that I tried early on was making some custom molds, and they've really helped me. It's been very efficient and helped me not have a lot of waste when I'm working on a certain project. So one of the things I'm working on right now, I've got a couple of these Dwarven Forge pieces, which of course are very, very nice, but also pretty expensive. And so in the meantime, since I made my last video, I also opened up an Etsy store. So that's at cicadacrafts.com, C-I-C-A-D-A crafts.com. And so you can see everything that I've got on there. I've got unpainted pieces, unglued pieces, and then completely finished pieces. But one of the things that I've had some requests for are like Dwarven Forge compatible accessories and pieces for when everybody gets their Kickstarter packages this fall, or whenever they come in. And so what I've done is I've played around with the Hirst Arts molds. So here is the fieldstone blocks, and then the cracked tiles floors. And these are the 1-inch floors, which I'm not used to working with because I've always worked with the 1.5 inch, so that I don't have to use quite as many tiles. And also I make my walls quite a bit longer than this. So my standard piece looks like this. So quite a bit longer and a lot less pieces to accomplish what I want to do. So there's two things I'm working on. One is making that Dwarven Forge compatible piece. So if I put these side by side, there's a really good picture on Etsy right now that compares these. Unless you put them on a flat surface, you can't really tell, but here's as close as possible. So pretty compatible. The walls are a little bit shorter. I mean, by a little bit, I mean 1/8 of an inch shorter. But the tiles line up perfectly. The grid lines up almost perfectly. And the actual depth of the foam board that I use actually ends up matching because their basing is a solid base. So you can see that. Whereas I use the foam board on mine. This is just a little prototype unit. But what I'm about to do is make a whole set like this, so you can add onto your Dwarven Forge sets. So what I needed to do was make a lot of the fieldstone blocks. So I need to make a lot of these for the walls. I need to make a lot of these. I mean hundreds of them, which are the longer pieces. So there's the short piece and the long piece. And then I also need, even more hundreds of the 1-inch floor tiles. And they come in lots of different variations with different cracks and things on them. None of this is painted. I've actually switched over to use the dark gray plaster. And so for no particular reason, they were just out of stock of white, and so I'm using the gray now. And I actually kind of like it because it gives me an idea of what it's going to look like, whereas the white pieces are just very, very stark. So here's a comparison of the white versus the gray. So you can see the gray kind of gives you an idea of what it's going to look like already without even being primed or anything. So let me show you. I want to show you a little bit about how to create the molds. So for this part 1 video, we're going to go through what you need to do this, and then how to choose containers and set up your containers. And then part 2, we'll actually pour a mold, and I'll show you how to demold that and start casting it. So the first thing you want to do is find some containers. So I get these are little discount containers. So this was like $2.50 at the store. This one's perfect because it's got 2 containers in it, so I can make 2 very, very small molds. And so what I'm going to use that for, I am actually making, to go along with this set, doorways. So that's of course the popular doorway. So I need to make a lot of those, and I want to make some of those for my older sets, my large sets as well. And so you have to have 2 of these pieces. You have to have 2 of these, and then you have to have 2 of these, so they go back to make the door. Well, you only get 1 of those in the mold that it comes in, and then you have to cast a lot of extra stuff, and so you end up with a box full of extra stuff just to get 2 doors. So wasting plaster, which is not that cheap to get shipped to your house. I'm lucky because I'm in Arkansas, so I can actually go and grab it in Heber Springs. I don't have to have it shipped. But normally to ship it, it's anywhere from $15 to $30, and so that's pretty expensive. So that's perfect. I can fit the entire one door set so that I don't have to pour twice. I pour once for one door, and it makes exactly one door. And then I've also got these skulls. So there's lots of different skulls from Hirst Arts. And I just put those in between as fillers. And I can show you how that works here in a minute. But any kind of plastic container, these are just like your standard like sandwich containers that your kids take to school. I just pop the top off of it. So this is the top. And then it's got these little handles on the side. I just pop those off as well so they don't get in the way. And then this lid you can, I'm sure use for something else. So you end up with just this container. And we'll actually pour a mold in these two. So how do you set your pieces in there? Because that's a really important part. So when I made my first set of molds, if you don't get it seated in there correctly, then you end up with a mold that's right, except for the very, very bottom. And you'll have like extra pieces of plaster or even pieces missing in the very bottom. And when you're stacking pieces, that's pretty important. And so we take that container, and then there is a glue that you can purchase, and I'm sure there's lots of different brands of this, but actually the same company that makes the tacky glue that most everybody uses for terrain, the Eileen's glue. Eileen's glue also makes a glass and bead, and then a glass super glue. So it's a slick surface adhesive. That's what you're looking for. So slick surface adhesive on there. I think this is like $2-3 at Hobby Lobby. Some people have said that they use super glue. I've not had any luck with super glue, so I can actually show you what happened when you go to super glue these pieces. So you can put some super glue in one of these little small tiles, and then put it in here, let it cure for the amount of time, and then if you touch this container at all, my experience is if I touch this container at all and flex it at all, they just pop right off. And then you get this, which is, you can see the super glue residue. It cured without bonding to the plastic, because this is a special type of plastic that they use where you can wash these in the dishwasher. It's not porous. There's nothing for the super glue to kind of hang on to. It's a slick surface, and so that's why the slick surface glue works much better. My absolute favorite container to use for this is actually a glass Pyrex dish, and I get these at TJ Maxx. They're usually, I think, $9 or $10. I get these at TJ Maxx for $5, and you can reuse them. So this is a glass Pyrex dish, and I've already set my walls up in there, and then I had a little extra space left over, so I put the rounded treasure chest of those in there because I sell quite a bit of those on Etsy. And so I need to just, whenever I can, make those and have them in stock. But that is a glass Pyrex section, and you can kind of tell. Let me grab a Hirst Arts mold real quick. So this is, of course, a Hirst Arts mold, and you can imagine whenever you pour in the bottom of this, what you'll end up with, because I'm only going to pour to about right there just to cover the pieces, and then I'm going to end up with something looking a lot like these pieces that Bruce does. So you'll notice that I've only put the pieces that I absolutely need. So I've got 12 of the short bricks that I use for the walls. So, and I use 3 for each piece. So I can make 4 walls out of this one pour. And I'll make a couple of these molds so I can cast it at the same time. And then I get 2 treasure chests. So I'll make 2 of these molds. So I'll be able to make 8 wall pieces and 4 treasure chests every single time I cast. And in addition to that, I've set these in another. This is just a sandwich container, like you put PB&J sandwiches in. I got it for $2 at TJ Maxx. Again, clipped the handles off of it, threw away the top, and now I just have this container. And the nice thing about these sandwich containers is that, unlike the Pyrex where it has a curved edge on it, so it has a really curved edge on the side, this goes flat. So it's flat all the way across the bottom. It's also flat against the sides. And so this will make a square mold with rounded corners. And so what that does, it allows you to put some more tiles in here. So you can see what I've done. Instead of having these 16 tiles separated, I've actually super glued them together, and I've chosen patterns since I'm going to have them craft over. So I went in and chose the cracks that kind of line up with each other and made 4 really nice looking tiles. And so once I get done pouring this with these others, I'll have 8 wall sections that all I have to do is glue the walls on and glue the basing on and paint them. That's it. Whereas before I had to, and I can show you, so to get 4 complete sections done, I ended up with, and I can't even show you all of it, but 4 complete sections, hallway sections. This is all the extra that I have, because you have to cast it over and over and over. You only get 2 of the small pieces that you need, and you get all of this. And so I have a container full of just stuff, and I'll use this for other things, but when I'm trying to finish a project, you know, this is what probably 80% of what I'm getting, and what I really need is about 20% of that, which are just these right here. So that's kind of the point of making the custom molds. And I can show you, so this just little tiny amount is what I got in my last casting. So that's just, it's not very efficient, especially if you want to sell sets like I'd like to. I'd like to sell dungeon sets on Etsy. They fetch anywhere from $100, $150 for a smaller set, and I really enjoy making them. So, you know, not a bad deal. My dolls are going crazy. Alright, so let's go through what you need as far as supplies. So the most important thing is your silicone. Now there's lots of information online. Even on the Hirst Arts site, there's lots of information about different types of silicone. This is the Umu 30 that I use. I really like it. I've used it, had success with it. It sets in 30 minutes. So as far as when you mix these two chemicals together, the reaction that happens about 30 minutes or so, and you can move the container around, but you can't peel it out. And then it cures in 6 hours instead of 24 or 36 hours. So in 6 hours, you're ready to demold it and start casting. So that's awesome, because that means that this really is, and that's one of the things that's really important to me, a weekend project. So I can do this on Saturday, and then all day Sunday I can cast and dry and glue. So I can get a lot accomplished on a Saturday and Sunday. So this is an awesome product. This stuff is $26 on Amazon. If you have Prime, most of the time you're able to find some of it that's actually sold by Amazon, so you can get free shipping on it, because it is a little heavy. It weighs 3 pounds. So I think the shipping was like $12 if it wasn't Prime, but I have a Prime account, so that doesn't matter. But anyway, so Umu 30, and it's awesome. That's made by Smooth On. Smooth On is a very large company. They as far as in this industry, like lots of terrain people use the Smooth On products. They make all kinds of plastics, resins, liquid. This is considered a liquid rubber or silicone rubber product. So Umu 30, and I'll put a link down in the description. So that is the silicone. You need some type of either glass or plastic container. You also need, of course, you need to go ahead and cast a couple of pieces. Or if you don't have the pieces you can need, there's usually sites you can find where you can purchase the pieces you need. Of course, on Etsy, there's several of us that sell pieces there. You could custom request the pieces that you need just for your mold, and we can cast those and send them to you. I mean, it's a couple of dollars, literally, for the pieces. And once you've got that, then you also need, of course, your slick surface glue. So your silicone, get that on Amazon. Your slick surface glue, you can get that at Walmart, Hobby Lobby, Michael's, pretty much anywhere. I'll put that in the description. A container, and then the pieces that you'd like to make a mold of. Other than that, the most important, or some of the important things that you'd need is hobby knife, just in case you get a little bit of glue outside of the area that you want it in. You can always scrape it off with a hobby knife, and I like this big fat large blade because we can set that against a flat surface and scrape it. And then you're going to need some mold release. So it's called mold release and conditioner. I got this at Hobby Lobby. It is, you can see it's $9.99, but that's what it looks like. That's a mold release, and that's very important because you have to spray that on everything for the silicone to not bond to your plaster or your hydrostone. So then when you go to demold it or peel it off of the negative, then or of your positive, then it's not going to tear up the silicone. Basically, it will come off really, really nicely. So this is really important. It's $9.99, but with Michael's and Hobby Lobby have 40% off coupons off of one item. So I always just go in, and when I think about it, I'll grab a bottle and use the 40% off coupon. So it's like $6.50. So not that bad, and you just use a few sprays each time. This bottle is going to last me for well over a year. Let's see. I think that's it as far as supplies. So once again, silicone, the glue, your pieces, your container, and then your mold release. So that's all the supplies. And then the first step really is to just set your container, your pieces in your container. For this, what I did was I used liquid super glue, and again, super glue is not good for attaching to these these containers. But what I did was I used super glue, just your standard gel super glue, to attach the pieces to themselves, so to build these pieces. Then I took the surface glue, squirt a little bit on there, and just use your finger and spread it evenly. So let's say that this is the piece that you're using, so just spread it evenly all the way around the edge, because what we're trying to do is create a seal around the edge. You can see where I tried to do that with super glue, but you want to create a seal all the way around the edge, so that when we pour the silicone into this container, no silicone goes anywhere under these pieces. It stops at the edge of the piece and then fills up from there and doesn't go under or into these pieces at all. You want a perfect seal around all four edges of every single piece, and that's not that hard to accomplish. So just have a paper towel and some alcohol standing by, and that's a good point with alcohol. I always make sure with this slick surface glue, it's a little bit sensitive to dust, and so make sure you just wipe everything out with alcohol. Then spread the glue evenly with your fingers, and then always make sure that you set your pieces with the usable side up, right? So what you want it to look like, set it up. So bottom down, top up, because whatever is facing the top is what your mold's going to cast. And I've done that a couple times. I'm not paying attention, and maybe the tiles look similar to the bottom, and I've gotten some tiles upside down every once in a while. It's fine if you do that, because you can actually just pop these out. If you really pull them really hard, you can pop them out and then use acetone to get rid of the glue, and you can start over. You can also just keep the container exactly like this if you know that you might want to make this mold again, or maybe make a mold for a friend or something like that. Then you can keep these containers. That's what I do. I'll pop the top back on this and then just keep it in storage. The same thing for this. I know that I'm going to need this mold a lot, so if that mold messes up, I don't want to have to reset this. But I do have other containers that I reuse, and so if I make a mold for maybe the basic blocks for my other pieces like this, I've got a mold for this. I actually made the mold. It worked really good. I tested it, made sure it was good before I broke down the positive for the mold, and everything was good. So I popped all these pieces out. Actually ended up using them because the glue popped off of it as well. Used some acetone to get the extra glue out of the container, and then I can make something else in that container. So it's up to you how you want to recycle those parts. All right, so now that we have got our pieces set in here, and the spacing is up to you. You can space things really, really close together. Let me show you an example of another mold that I've got. So this is the mold that I used to make these wall sections all at one time, and you can see how close I got those. So they are pretty close, maybe like a quarter of an inch between them, and I was able to, this is one of my first ever test molds. You can see how rough it is because I used super glue, and the super glue did not have a good, it didn't make a good seal, and so the edges of the mold are very tattered and torn. Which with the walls doesn't matter that much because it's the dungeon walls, and honestly you can't tell that it's there. But I am also starting to notice some wear and tear. So you can see in the corners there, I'm starting to notice some wear and tear because I've cast this thing, I don't know, probably 100 times or so. And so this is one of the ones that I'll remake. But that's about how thick it is, and you can see that when you turn it upside down, you can see that that was in a Pyrex container as well. So it's got that nice rounded corners, rounded edges. It just looks like a professional mold. So, all right, so that's all part one. So when we come back on part two, we will actually mix these two containers together. So the yellow and the blue containers in the Umu 30 contain a red and a blue chemical. When you mix them together 1-to-1 ratio, it turns purple, and then we'll pour it into our Pyrex container and wait for 6 hours for it to cure, and then we'll demold our brand new mold. So if anybody has any questions, make sure you leave those in the comments. I would appreciate any likes or subscribes. And so yeah, I'll see you next time.